Good evening and welcome to Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for March 2nd, 2023. And at this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. Commissioners who are present for this evening's meeting are at City Hall and on Zoom. We also have staff from the city attorney and clerk's offices, as well as the city planning department. If you are joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you are here. You may observe the meeting. However, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have process questions during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will reply as quickly as possible. With that, we'll begin with roll call. Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Wheeler,
Present.
Commissioner Lorcher. Here. Commissioner Grace,
Here.
Commissioner Rivera.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Seal.
Here.
Absent is Commissioner Stoddard.
First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Let me see, file number 2022-0066 for Artisan Victory Market. The variance request from a department determination concerning a proposed address change for 2201 East Gala Street by Orm Family and Implant Dentistry, and file number 2022-0013 for Promenade Cottages will be open for the sole purpose of continuing to a regularly scheduled meeting. If anybody is here tonight to testify for those applications, we will not be taking testimony on them. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have two items on the agenda. First is to approve the minutes of the February 16th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, as well as findings of facts, conclusions of law for the Wiener Schnitzel CUP H 2022-0074. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. This time, I would like to briefly explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to our comprehensive plan and unified development code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward to present their case and respond to staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant is finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during the public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who have signed up on our website in advance to testify. You will then be unmuted in Zoom, or you can come to the microphones and chambers. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. We have previously sent pictures or a presentation of the meeting. It will be displayed on the screen, and you or the clerk will run the presentation. If you have established that you are speaking on behalf of a larger group like an HOA, where others from that group will allow you to speak on their behalf, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all of those who have signed up in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify in Zoom or in chambers. On Zoom, if you're listening on multiple devices such as a computer or a phone, please be sure to mute the extra devices so we do not experience feedback and we can hear you clearly. When you're finished, if the commission does not have questions for you, you will return to your seat in chambers or be muted in Zoom and no longer have the ability to speak. Please remember, we generally do not call on you a second time. After all testimony has been heard, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final decisions or recommendations to City Council as needed. So at this time, I would like to continue the public hearing for the variance request from a department determination concerning concerning a proposed addressing change for 2201 East Gala Street by the Orm Family and Implant Dentistry. Can I get a motion to continue the variance request to March 16th, 2023?
So moved.
Apologies. So moved.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to continue the variance request from a department determination concerning a proposed addressing change for 2201 East Gallup Street by Orm Family and Implant Dentistry to the date of March 16th, 2023. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. I'd like to open the public hearing item H 2022-0066 for Artisan Victory Market. Can I get a motion to continue H 2022-0066 to the date of April 6th, 2023?
Moved.
It's been moved and seconded, continue file number H 2022-0066 to the date of April 6th, 2023. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We'll open public hearing for item number H 2022-0013 for Promenade Cottages subdivision. Can I get a motion to continue file number H 2022-0013 to the date of April 20th, 2023?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to continue file H 2022-0013 to the date of April 20th, 2023. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right. Now I'd like to open the public hearing for file number H 2022-0088, Newkirk Neighborhood, and we will begin with the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. First item on the agenda tonight is the Newkirk neighborhood. This has been continued a few times, so I'm glad we're finally here in front of you. And I'm happy to see a full commission tonight. It's been a while, so welcome to the show tonight, everyone. So applications before you tonight is annexation and preliminary plat. The subject property consists of 21.06 acres of land currently zoned RUT in Ada County. And it's generally located a quarter mile east of Black Cat Road, north side of West Franklin Road. Physical address is 4250 West Franklin Road here, and you can see that on the map here. It actually takes frontage off of Franklin Road with that 50-foot sliver of property. And I'll touch on that a little bit more as I get in my presentation. You can see here that on the future land use map, the subject property is designated medium high density residential in our 10 miles interchange specific area plan. And with that particular designation comes certain requirements. One of your roles as a commission is to find consistency with the comp plan. As you read the staff report getting prepared for tonight's hearing, you probably saw that staff had brought up quite a few concerns in the staff report about some of the design elements that are required as part of that comprehensive plan analysis. We have met with the applicant several times and let them know that as this body knows, the comp plan is a guide. And certainly when we're looking at projects, they are case by case. And we have to look at the area holistically and see what else has occurred in the area as part of that discussion and deliberation tonight. So I just at least wanted to plant that seed with all of you that this area is part of a larger medium high density residential designated area. But just for illustrative purposes, I thought it was important just to help educate you on some of the things that staff does when we analyze a project. So you know your job is to find consistency with the plan and the code. And our job is to accept an application and do the same thing. We're all on the same page, rowing in the same direction, if you will. And so as I mentioned to you, this particular plan property is an MHDR designation. And so the graphic on the left represents some of those design elements that we have to look for. It points us to what pages in the comprehensive plan we need to focus on and analyze as we do our review of an application in this area. Those green dots that you see there is what we analyzed in the staff report. And what we highlighted in the staff report is what we felt was missing as part of the application. Now, keep in mind, a lot of the elements that are on this plan are encompassed in the comp plan. For example, density. This particular property does require a density of 8 units to the acre. Well, sorry, a target density of 12 units to the acre, with densities ranging between 6 and 15. And so when you have competing interests of density competing with design concepts, sometimes those don't always mesh. And so that's why I really wanted to bring that to your attention tonight and kind of daylight that issue with you. You can see here on the graphic at the right, we anticipate heights of 1 to 3 stories. The plan does not speak to height in feet in that way. The plan really does speak to stories, and that really comes down to how you design a structure. It also mentions that porches and garage should be the dominant design feature and not necessarily garages. And as I get into my presentation, you'll notice that some of the elevations are garage dominated. And then predominantly a project should have alley loaded project. Now, where we kind of get a little difference between the comp plan and the zoning district that they're requesting is the comprehensive plan does want a mix of housing types, and so does the zoning district that they're requesting. Right? So I think that is a good thing as part of this project. Like anything, we want to make sure we look at the long-term viability of this project because it's something that we live with as a community forever and ever. But at least I just wanted to highlight that with you. So again, when we tailored the staff report to you, we did find consistency with a lot of the elements of the plan, and that's why we did recommend approval. But we did want to at least bring to your attention that there are certain design elements that need to be looked at as part of the plan. Now, certainly, as this body, you'll have to make that finding if it is consistent, and if you agree with some of the discussion that we have tonight, certainly I would encourage you to include that in your motion. Some of the elements you don't think the applicant needs to comply with. Again, this is a guide. We try to get consistency as close as we can. Not every project gets there though. So again, the applicants here, they're requesting a TNR zoning district. Again, that specific zone does require a minimum of 2 residential products. This particular project will have the attached product, the alley load townhome product, and then it'll also have a multifamily component. The other unique thing about a TNR zone is that multifamily is principally permitted. So although you'll see a lot of details on the plans tonight for the multifamily development, a lot of the open space amenities and even the site design and elevations will be more scrutinized at the staff level design review process. I just wanted you to make you aware that there is a little difference nuance with the TNR zone. And if you look at the comprehensive plan and this designation in particular, TNR is the best aligned zoning designation for this particular site as well. So we have density that aligns, we have road networks that align, we have product mix that aligns. Again, it really comes down to whether or not front porches and you want more alley loaded product as part of this design element is probably the best way to couch it to you this evening. So you can see here's the proposed preliminary plat. The applicant is proposing 63 lots. 44 of those will be the attached product, which is along the perimeter here up against the railroad tracks and adjacent property subdivision that was approved recently, the aviation subdivision. And you have some internal lots here. Here are the alley loaded products, which will have 18 of those townhome lots, and then the one large multifamily lot here that will house 200 plus multifamily units in the future. As you are aware in the staff report, there were a number of stub streets stubbed to this property, and typically our policies require stub streets to be extended along with ACHD. At the time that we had drafted the staff report, ACHD was recommending that all stub streets be extended and that this Zimmerman Lane, this sliver of property that touches Franklin, be extended as part of this development. This afternoon, we had the applicant, myself, met with ACHD staff. ACHD did require additional information in order to determine whether or not that was a necessary connection to Franklin. I report to the commission tonight that I did receive an email from Christy Little at ACHD, and she actually, the applicant did provide the additional information, and therefore ACHD found that the applicant's traffic study did support or confirm that an additional access using Zimmerman Lane was not required. So essentially the TI said no, we don't need to extend Zimmerman Lane to Franklin. However, the applicant will be required to extend 3 stub streets in 2 different fashions. And I'll explain here. So essentially this West Sky Hill Road here, street, I guess, it's stubbed currently with the Ascent Townhomes. That will be extended per ACHD's conditions. The 2 other stub streets in the Ascent subdivision are required to be extended, but with future development, and the applicant has to provide a road trust for those extensions. So they'll put up the money for the adjacent developer to use that money to extend the road. And then, as you're aware, there's the master street map does designate a collector street that runs from the southeast corner and then ties into that aviation subdivision to the west. And that roadway will be constructed with phase 1 of the development, and that is part of the development agreement. So if you really look at the overall connectivity in the area, this is a crucial connection point in order to move people to and through this area without having to use Franklin Road. And that's kind of where that public benefit comes in my earlier discussion, that this is probably, this is a much needed connection to happen in this area, especially with all the density and multi-family developments occurring in the area. As part of the comprehensive plan and also the TNR standards, pedestrian connectivity is just as valuable as vehicular connectivity. And so as part of the submission, the applicant did provide a pedestrian network plan for you, so to speak. A lot of the interconnectivity is sidewalks from the adjacent subdivisions and internal to the development. I would mention to the commission that the city's master's pathways plan does not have a pathway designation on this particular project. So that's why a lot of the connectivity is through the adjacent sidewalks required with the development of this site, which is both consistent with the comp plan and UDC standards. Open space. So in the staff report, we had asked the applicant to provide a revised applicant or open space exhibit. After I met with the applicant, determined that the site does meet UDC standards for qualified open space. It actually exceeds it. I mean, to be honest with you, they have 35% open space. I think what we were getting at in our analysis of the staff report is we just needed more details showing how they met it. In working with the applicant, looking through their narrative, the details were there, just didn't quite articulate that in the staff report as well as we could have. And so really what staff would prefer is that the applicant just provide us those open space calcs and make sure that they're compliant with each phase of their development. As I mentioned to you, first phase of this particular project will occur with the single family and townhome lots, and second phase will be the multifamily development. So I anticipate a lot of those details will be worked out. And then also as part of the consistency with the comprehensive plan, and we talked about this with the applicant as well, as we'd like to see additional benches along the collector road, this arterial roadway, or excuse me, the collector roadway, which is something that's encouraged by the plan as well, along with public art. We condition to do that. So we're hoping that the applicant, in my indications work on the applicant, they are in favor of public art somewhere along the roadway too, to not only add as an amenity, but also be consistent with the plan. Again, here's a blow up of those amenities. As you're aware, with single family, multifamily developments, there's a certain amount of amenities that have to be provided for each development. Recently, we did a code amendment that when you have a multifamily development that is kind of intermixed with a single family, so they're combined together, they're integrated with one another, like this will be. The open space is looked at as just 15% open space. You don't require the multifamily to provide the baseline open space. So that's why the applicant has gone into detail to show that what's being planned for open space for not only the multifamily, but also the single family. And like I said, 35% is a pretty good increase for open space in this area. And you can see here's the list of amenities. Staff finds that the applicant is compliant with both standards, not only the single family standards, but also the multifamily. Again, a lot of the multifamily details will be looked at with future certificate of zoning compliance and design review application. Don't want to touch on this subject too much. I know we've met with the applicant and discussed this as well, but as you're aware, ACHD does allow many different standard road typologies, templates for their local streets. They are starting to push more towards a narrower footprint for roadways, just for less pavement, less maintenance costs for all of us as taxpayers. So this developer's gone above and beyond what's required by the application submittal to provide what would be some additional on-street parking should you have questions with their narrow lots that they're providing along the perimeter. Again, the applicant will be required to comply with UDC standards. Staff did analyze the required parking for the multifamily residential portion as well, and they do exceed the minimum standards as part of that development as well. So now kind of touching back on that elevations and kind of how I opened up the conversation. Again, the 10-mile plan does have very specific design elements. And I actually commend the applicant to try to have a cohesive design theme, because that's really what the architectural design manual tries to achieve too, is we want cohesive design where we can get it to. What I didn't touch on is that some of the lots as part of the subdivision are only 27 feet wide. So the TNR zoning district does not have a minimum lot size like our other zoning districts, and there's no minimum street frontage. It comes down to design, like anything, right? If you meet these design concepts, then you meet the code or you meet the comprehensive plan. In this particular case, you have a comp plan that wants a certain density. You want a code that wants a certain amount of open space and a certain mix of product type. And when you mix those two, sometimes there's conflicts. And so when we met with the applicant this afternoon, their lots along the perimeter are only 27 feet wide. And so they're trying to meet the spirit of the comprehensive plan by getting that density, target density that we're looking for, that so we can support transit in the future. But with that comes some design challenges. And so I think, as staff, again, we have to analyze a project against those design criteria and determine whether or not it's a good fit. Now, again, as I mentioned too, a lot of this plan that the applicant's proposing does meet a lot of the things, a lot of good things of what we're trying to achieve. So really, again, if this is something that you support, certainly we understand the applicant's challenges with trying to have 30% front porches when you only have a 27-foot wide lot, and still trying to achieve that density of the comprehensive plan. In other projects in this area, the applicant was successful in having the council kind of analyze that and have that discussion as part of the public hearing. So I don't want to try to minimize that the design element isn't important, but what I want to do is make sure that we have the right discussion, and anything that you do, it's captured as part of the record, and that the applicant can take that forward to city council, or at least the council will know the commission had the discussion and where you weighed in on that issue. And so looking at the public record, I guess I did want to touch on the common drives real quick as well. So again, I know the commission is not too keen on common driveways. In this particular case, I think the applicant's done a good job of only providing one. We did call out that the applicant is proposing 4 taking access off of 1 common driveway. As you know, we only allow 3 off of 1 side of a common driveway. So we've either requested the applicant lose a lot or seek alternative compliance with their final plat application. So they have the ability to do that alternative compliance with the final plat and ask for that to have 4 lots. I think in this particular case, because the common drive, there's 1 and it's not very long, more than likely staff would support that recommendation. So in looking at the public record, I did not note any written testimony as part of this application. And again, staff is recommending approval with conditions. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation and stand for any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. Would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening, members of the commission. Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise, representing the applicant. Good to see a couple of familiar faces and several new faces, so this will be good. Thank you, Bill. So we are here to talk about the New Kirk neighborhood. And I'd like to start out by kind of giving you a little bit of background on the property. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the constraints that we had to overcome as we tried to design this property. And then through the course of all of that, I'll respond to some of the comments that Bill made about that balancing act that we have to do between the comprehensive plan goals. So of course, this is an infill site, true infill site, and infill is always fun, always a challenge. You know, the city wants infill, we want to do infill, but every time you do infill, there are difficulties that have to be overcome. This is part of the 10-mile interchange specific area plan. I'm just going to call that the 10-mile plan, if that's okay with you guys. I was playing around with the TMISAP acronym, and it wasn't any easier. So let's just call it the 10-mile plan. It's also a priority growth area. City services are available. This is a project that really needs to go. And if for no other reason than the east-west mid-mile collector that it will provide that Bill previously mentioned. So talking a little bit about some of the challenges here. So this is a triangular site. So triangular sites are always complicated because you have these areas that are difficult to fill in. But that's also complicated by the fact that we have a mid-mile collector with the connection points that are already designed for us. And you can see that this one has kind of a tough angle down on the southeast. And then it comes across and connects across here. So that's basically the lower, call it 15-20% of the site that's taken up by that mid-mile collector. We have the railroad and the Kennedy lateral on the north. That means that access has to come from the south, and all of that access ends up coming through the apartments on the east and the west. And then in addition, we have some grading and we have some slope challenges. There's a significant amount of fall as you come from about here down towards the south. So kind of understanding all of that and understanding that a lot of this table has been set for us. Let's talk a little bit about the comp planning. And Bill made a couple of really important points there, but I think it's really critical that we focus on the fact that this is medium high density residential. There's a lot of stuff in the 10-mile plan that's called for that's a lot easier to do in different designations. For example, in the medium density designation, it's a lot easier to have a wider lot that allows you to do a porch. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit, but this is a medium high density area. So we're targeting 12 units per acre. And we know the city is serious about that because some of these other projects nearby were sent back to come back with more density. Because as Bill mentioned, this is an area that the city is hoping is going to eventually be eligible for transit. We got to keep those densities up to be able to do that. So if we look at see, I've got my silly acronym up here. I forgot to change it to 10-mile plan. If we look at that medium high density residential designation, and of course, this is not code. This is the comprehensive plan. It's policy. It's, we look through it and we try to identify the policies and apply them where we can. But what we do see is this target of 12 dwelling units. And we also speak to a relatively dense mixture of housing types, row houses, townhouses, condominiums, apartment buildings, complexes. And so we're trying to land the plane there and meet that density while also meeting the other requirements of the 10-mile plan. So if we look at the neighboring surrounding density, those numbers aren't always easy to hit. You can see that actually there's only a couple that have been able to hit the 12 units per acre density goal. And it's almost impossible to do without the benefit of apartments, which is why the 10-mile plan speaks to that mixture of apartment buildings and other housing types. So if we look at our site plan, we have on 21 acres, we have the 62 single-family homes on the west, along with 216 apartment units. Again, overall density of 12.98, so right at the target. And as Bill mentioned, 35% of open space. There is an abundance of amenities. So on the single family side, we have the large 1 acre park, and with all the amenities that I've identified here with the playground, the swings, the climbing dome, et cetera. And again, the 35% open space. Now the housing, I'm going to come back to some of the questions or the points that, or the elevations, I should say. I'm going to come back to some of the points that Bill made in just a second. But I do want to point out that these are examples of what the single family townhomes would look like. And then the alley loaded townhomes would be in the 3-unit structures like you see here. They would be allocated, as you can see on this map. So the alley loaded is in the kind of purple color. And then the green is the 44 single family attached homes. Bill already showed you this, and this is largely for design review, but we wanted to show you that there is a cohesive design that's already contemplated. So this is the kind of interesting part of the conversation. I've been doing this for, believe it or not, getting close to 20 years. And I don't think I've ever had the kind of comments at the beginning of the staff report and then get to the end of it and say, hey, I'm in agreement with all the conditions of approval. I'm good. So let's circle back then and talk about what Bill mentioned here on the architecture and the porches. So I think it's important first to note that porches, that's a design review element. That's not part of the platting. That's not part of the annexation. I don't think that that's an appropriate conversation, frankly, for tonight, but it's something that we can bring into the conversation if you'd like. But I think really the question is this question of alley loading and whether the lots need to be made wider in order to accommodate the porches. So again, the 10-mile plan is a comprehensive planning document. Again, it sets forth goals and policies. It's like a Rorschach, you hit as much as you can. This area, as I mentioned before, is medium high density residential, target of 12 units. It calls for a variety of units, just like we've provided. A target of 12 units to the acre doesn't allow for 60-foot lots with room for porches. The larger point that I would make is that this requirement of porches has to be read in the context of the overall plan. It's much more doable in the medium density areas. It's not really doable in the medium high density areas where you're looking for a higher density limit. But we have worked with the site and the site constraints to get the city a variety of housing types. So let me bring this back here. So we have our triplex townhomes over here that are in the purple that are alley loaded. The garage is to the rear. We've done what staff has asked for by providing that product. We've done it where we can. Now, we've talked a lot about the 10-mile plan, but one thing that we haven't talked about is actual code. And the TNR code specifically states that front-loaded product is allowed. This is in stapled it too high, 11-2D-6. Street access properties are allowed in the district and that they are contemplated around the perimeter of the project. So we have all of this that should also be street accessed and that's for obvious reasons. You wouldn't want to have an alley on the backside that only serves one side, only has homes on one side. That's going to be a burden for the homeowners association to maintain. So really all we're talking about when we talk about this alley loaded question is this middle block here. And as you can see, that middle block doesn't have the space to be able to accommodate a driveway. If we were to put a driveway in, that driveway would then connect. It can't connect in, you don't want it connecting into the park, and it can't connect into a collector road. So we don't believe that an alley can really function there. And the other option would be potentially to flip those lots. Maybe you put a mew in the middle, but what that ends up looking like in our view is, if I can find this. This is from the Henley Station project just to the west. We think that if you flip those lots like that, then you end up having the rear facing the front and you have a whole lot of pavement in between. And so the block that I mentioned before is going to be a mismatch. It's not going to match the rest of the project. So we don't think that there is enough depth for it. And we also think that it would mismatch with the rest of the project. And so from that perspective, we don't think it's appropriate to force a square peg into a round hole. So in short, we do appreciate the 10-mile plan's goals. We think that we've accomplished them. We do have alley loaded product. We understand the intent for that, but it can't be done everywhere. And you can't do that and widen out the lots and still meet the density goals for the medium high density neighborhoods. And I would just also point out that the mixture that we've done and the elevations that you see are very consistent with the other 4 projects that are nearby. That was another thing that was something that took us aback a little bit in looking at the staff report, was that these are requirements that haven't been imposed on the other projects nearby. You can see this is also from Henley Station. So with that, we think this is a really positive project. We think it brings in that mid-mile collector everybody needs. We have put a lot of thought into a challenging site. We've accomplished the goals of the 10-mile plan where we can, and we've hit the density targets that the city has for this site. And so with that, I'd be happy to stop talking and answer questions.
Thank you very much, Heath.
Yep.
We have questions from our commissioners? From staff or the applicant? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's see, it is Heath, is that right? Heath, okay, just double check. Heath, with 35% of open space, would there have been some ways, I mean, that's a lot of open space, which is awesome. Could have there been, I mean, you had a lot of Play-Doh to work with to try to figure something out that might have worked a little bit better. I mean, you have a lot of room to work with lot lines, adjustments of lots where they sit, moving around in buildings and things like that. So, and you're talking about it being constrained, but you got 35% open space. So what are you seeing that's constraining you from not using this excessive open space?
Commissioner Wheeler, good question. So a lot of the open space is driven by that, as I mentioned, we don't have control over where that mid-mile collector connects. And so you can see there's massive green swaths, including down these areas that are south of the connection point over on the southeast, and which is also fixed. In order to meet the density requirements, we need to have enough apartments. So on the apartment side, we got about half of the project over there to try to get those numbers up. And then we end up with about 10 acres of single family residential on the west that's left. And even with this design, we're only at about 6 units to the acre on that piece of it. And so the more we spread that out, make wider lots or do whatever, we actually push down the densities, or yes, push down the densities at that point. So we actually, it's where it's kind of like the bag where you putting something in and something else comes out. That's kind of the issue that we're confronted with as a result.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask probably the same question a different way.
Okay.
So you're saying that the 12 units per acre is a requirement. Is that a requirement?
Commissioner Seal, it is the target that's identified in the comprehensive plan is 12 units per acre.
Okay, so for the things that you are non-compliant with, your argument is that these are just guidelines. But for the one thing that you're trying to tell us as a requirement, it's not a requirement.
No, I don't.
It's a guideline.
No, I'm not. I don't think I'm saying that. I'm saying that the entirety of the 10-mile plan is a guideline, and we're hitting as many of those guidelines as we can, including the target of 12 units per the acre.
Okay, but the way that you presented it was 12 was a requirement. That is what you said. That's what I want to make sure that we have a full understanding here is if we're going to talk about the comprehensive plan and the 10-mile plan as not being requirements, then neither is the 8 to 15. So, and with that, I guess my question to staff is what is the entitlement piece of it?
Commissioner Steele, I'm trying to make sure I'm tracking you here. So
Okay.
8 to 12. So 12 is the target, 8 to 12 on medium high. These are the bands that we have to hit. And so I'm not trying to mislead anyone by suggesting that. What I'm saying is with in the 10-mile plan, there are all of these various things that we're supposed to be trying to hit, including the porches, including the alley load, including hitting these density bands that we're talking about. And if you're going to hit all of, something has to give between all of them. And especially when you're talking about medium high, where the city wants more density. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Appreciate that. Another question is Zimmerman going to be signalized?
Commissioner Steele, no, Zimmerman won't be signalized. So what, so Zimmerman, for, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, Zimmerman is this private lane that's to the south of the property. So ACHD updated their comments on Zimmerman. It is not going to be a local street. Part of the reason for that is that this ACHD wants this east-west collector to be the primary collector moving people across the block. And if you make Zimmerman a local street, then it turns into essentially a de facto collector. You're going to have people leaving the transportation network in the place that ACHD wanted it and heading straight down. So ACHD does not want a local street there. They want it cut off just exactly as we've shown here. So it will not interface with our mid-mile collector. It will remain as a private lane. But in addition, I would note that we need to make sure that those stubs that are on the properties to the south can connect. So there will be some dedication of portions of that to ACHD so that they can stub in the future. But it will not be signalized. It will remain a private lane according to ACHD.
Bill also showed that there would be a stub street that's going to connect to the property to the south. Can you show where that's going to be?
Yeah, it will be approximately here. And then there will be another connection up here.
Okay. Anybody else? Go right ahead.
I have two questions, one a bit more general. Say we decide, hey, these front porches are really important. And this is something that we need to get to. Is there any, either from staff or from your side, any estimate on roughly what that loss in development would be, how many units that would be reduced by, and what that might look like?
Commissioner Smith, this is pretty back of the napkin, but if you're going to have a 30% porch coverage and deal with garages and do all that, you're probably talking 60-foot lots. I mean, it's going to be significant. I mean, you go from a medium high project to a medium project at the very least.
And then my second question is actually for staff. I understand the desire for more alley access, but in light of the response and comments, I'm just wondering if you're envisioning additional alley access homes. Do you have a vision for what that might look like? Just looking at this map here, I'm kind of seeing the issue with kind of finding that alley access. Do you have any thoughts on where that might go, what that might look like?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. To your point, no, we have not done that exercise. I know we've had correspondence with ACHD and they weren't real keen on doing that either, based on the feedback that we got from them, because it does align strange and they do not want again, this is a collector roadway and we want to minimize access points to collector roadway. So if we were to do that, there's going to be a lot of conflicts and a lot of access points on that. And so that's, you're almost, to your point, the only way you could do it is essentially take that internal block and rotate it 90 and then have the alley go this way. And then the applicant's building another street. So they're building an alley plus another street. And then you're losing kind of that connectivity with the open space there. But you could have the units fronting on open space where there's a street. So it can be done. You lose open space, to be honest with you. That's what's going to end up happening here. And you're going to provide a lot more paving.
Commissioner Smith, if I could just add, just a reminder that the code does say that the perimeter lots, that perimeter lots would be street accessed. So it is, again, just that middle block. And again, if you're just looking at this and you see an alley where it would go, even if you had enough depth, and then this cursor's struggling a little bit, that alley would come down here. It would intersect the park. You wouldn't have spacing from that intersection. It really would create a number of problems.
Thank you.
Mr.
Sure,
Chair.
go ahead.
Well, going back to that, I mean, you could go ahead and run that street there. I think it's Carson Street, just due west, tie in there and have that, yeah, because you've got enough open space to play with. You could cut down that park area there too. I'm sure you thought of that too. So what was kind of the reasoning to not go that direction?
The reasoning would be that the impact on this intersection, you'd have a 5-legged intersection at that point into a collector street.
Okay.
And that would be, yeah, ACHD would probably hang me if I even.
Quick question on the common drive. There's arguably 5 things that are going to take access from that. One's just really a smidgen on there. So one of the things that's come to my mind lately, or I've been educated about, is the fact that you can have basically your trash services and stuff like that. They will back in and pick things up instead of leaving things out on the corner. Because we have smaller streets and because we do have pretty high density in here. Is that something that you can build into the, into the HOA, or that basically that is going to happen with that common driveway, just to keep all of that off the street?
So in other words, the trash service would be at each of the homes?
Correct. They back in essentially is what's.
I mean, we can certainly look at that. I mean, and this would be something that would be an alternative compliance item at final plat. So I'm certain that the staff would ask those questions as well. The other thing that I would mention on that is that it's 4 lots that take, but it's a very narrow, very short run. If we were in a medium density example, you'd probably have twice the run on that common drive. So
right.
That's part of the reason. And we're also doing those duplex or two connected townhomes. And so we're trying to keep that consistent.
Okay. Yeah. And that's part of the reason I ask, is just because everything is, the roads are a little bit smaller. It's right on a corner. Mm-hmm. Especially with the trash bins, it just ends up being, it can be quite a mess.
Sure.
So I understand that it is a short run and these are, pretty small homes, but I know that is available and is something I'd like to see a lot more of. Just seeing how that works and how it lays out, especially, we've had meetings with developers about that, and that is something that they have shown that a very good way to do that.
Okay.
Eliminates my concerns about it for sure.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Commissioner Grace, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Heath, can you just, and I apologize if you already addressed this and maybe I wasn't tracking with you, but it seemed like the elevations were a big concern to staff. Can you just address that again really quick about how you?
Yeah, Commissioner Grace. So I think there's a couple of things here and I just want to be really clear on it. So I appreciate the question. In my view, the question of porches in general is a design review question, and we're not a design review. So that's one item. If it is the preference or, the recommendation or whatever, to accommodate for that by doing one more block of alley load or whatever, or to increase the size of the lots, then I think that's more germane to tonight's discussion. And that's more of a 30,000-foot question than the 5,000-foot design review question. And again, my point to that is we think we've adhered to the spirit of the rule by doing alley load where we could. And that we've shown, why we think that it's more appropriate to have a mix here for the remainder of the lots, including as a result of the code that allows for that on the perimeter, the depth, and also the fact that we have 4 other projects that are essentially the same mixture of types that have already gone in this very area.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, if I could just piggyback on a little bit of what Heath said as well, is he's bringing up, I think our concern wasn't necessarily to Heath's point or the applicant's point is it's not necessarily the perimeter because that's established, right? We don't need 15 alleys provided on this site. It really comes down to, I think our preference or our concern was really these internal lots right here to Heath's point. And the code doesn't say thou shall be alley loaded. It says it's anticipated. So there is some gray area there in code, but certainly that's when I looked at the staff report and analyzed it, that's where I think staff was really trying to get the point across that really this is what's intended to be more alley loaded than the perimeter so much.
And maybe to just add one more other thing, Mr. Chair, if I can. The 10-mile plan is a guide. So it's something that we do our best to adhere to. We execute on those policies. And then even within the guide, it has permissive language as to these points. It says should, it doesn't say thou shalt. So.
Go right ahead.
Forgive me if this is a silly idea, but I'm not an architect, so I'm throwing some thought out. I'm wondering, at least on the alley access side, if you could almost kind of almost stub an alleyway, and maybe you lose a house of density on that current non-alley access, but you're able to provide alley access to, I don't know, maybe half of these otherwise street access roads. You would essentially have a smaller, lower volume street or alley type street, kind of going between, kind of the equivalent, honestly, if you were to take that, I don't know, that Carson Street, minify that and then put it again exactly alongside that that middle section right there, providing alley access to maybe some of those, at least increasing the diversity of that mix. And maybe you lose a house or a townhome in density to provide that outlet onto Carson rather than onto the Collector Street. Has that been considered? Is there a reason why that's a kind of bad idea to a layman?
So I think, Commissioner Smith, what you're saying is come down like this and then out over here.
Either loop out there or loop out slightly more northward, onto kind of that north-south Carson Street section.
Gotcha.
You have a slight
Yeah,
low traffic turn there.
And sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no
There's a couple of thoughts that I have there. One is, and maybe I left that too quickly, but the block that's just to the east of that is deeper. And we kind of squeezed as much as we could out of that one to be able to accommodate the internal alleyway. The block to the west that you're talking about isn't as deep. And so you have an issue fitting the alley really in any event as a result of that. That's leaving aside things like turnarounds or whatever you might need to be able to allow for that to be safe. There's another element of this too, is that, there's a lot, there are folks that want to live in alley loaded product. They don't want any yard to take care of, they just want to complete, lock it and leave kind of a solution. That's not true of probably the majority of the folks that are looking at this product. Most of them want a little bit of backyard. And so what the design that we've done allows for is to have some backyard so, the dog can do its business, but, still reach the density goals that we're talking about here. So we're trying to balance a lot of stuff. So.
I'll turn my microphone on now. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much, Heath.
you.
Appreciate it. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify this evening?
We do. We have Paris Brower. Okay, thank you. Then we have no one, Mr. Chair.
Is there anybody online that's raising their hand? Doesn't look like it. Okay, and with that, since there is no public testimony, would the applicant like to add anything else? Are there any further questions at this point of the applicant? All right, with that, I will take a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0088, Newkirk Neighborhood.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded that we close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0088. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, public hearing is closed. With that, I will take the first comments, discussions,
Sure.
right ahead.
Just some initial thoughts. I think there's, I can see a lot of where staff is coming from. And there's a lot in this, you know, I look at it and go, if only could just kind of slightly tweak it a little bit. And I think a lot of the design review and things like that will be instrumental in this. I think generally the developer seems to be have done a pretty good job in trying to balance all of these competing issues and interests. And so I think there are obviously some contingencies or some conditions. I think there's some conditions that I'd like to see added. I think your comment on the common drive is something I agree with, and I'm glad you brought that up. But beyond that, I think, you know, if nothing changes and this is the worst that we get, I think it's still a pretty good project.
Thank you. Other comments?
Mr. Chair.
Right ahead.
Excuse me. I like infill projects. You guys have heard me say that multiple times. I like the kind of creativity that can come from them. I like to see the problem solving that happens in unique spots. And this one has its own uniquenesses for sure. And the way to try to put this thing together has been, is hard and is tough in order to accommodate everything from ACHD to the developer's needs and wants on it all, and what also the code requires on it. There seems like there's a lot of latitude in this zoning, the TNR, within the 10-mile district. And try to hitting those densities along with as much as open spaces they have. I can see that a lot of it's on that arterial, that collector is where a lot of that open space is falling into. And then trying to hit those density loads on top of it. That's the difficulty with this infill project here. It would be nice to see, as staff is pointing out, that alleyway drive that could connect there somehow, some way, with an adjustment on lot size or and I hate to say it, to like maybe some different design even and on that section. But with all the efforts that go into trying to figure out how to use these pieces and maximize space, profitability, use, comfort, something that's going to be an attractive product type for your customers is difficult. This one's hard for me. I don't know which way I kind of lean on it, to be honest with you, but that's where there's been a lot of thought that's gone in to try to make this thing work. And it seems like a lot of time too with staff trying to figure out what's going to be the best to move forward with this product.
Thank you. Commissioner Grace?
Mr. Chair, I was just gonna kind of say something similar to what Commissioner Wheeler said. I think there are some challenges with this project, the shape, the slope, it's an infill project. The lateral, the railroad. I think they did a good job with it. I actually tend to agree with the applicant about the alley in that kind of infill area there, the box there with the residential single family. So I'm not sure there's a great solution, but I was persuaded by the sort of the argument that was made by the applicant about why that's not ideal. Particularly when they've tried to hit that target density range, and it looks like they did. So I think I'll be supporting it.
I'll chime in here real quick. Yeah, infill like this is tough. This has been a tough area to develop, for sure. So I actually like the way the multifamily is laid out. We've got ample parking in there. We have ample open space, which is also difficult to pull off in here. As far as the alley load, I mean, to me, either keep it the way that it is and understand that, we're not going to get 100% of everything in here that we're shooting, that we're aiming for. I mean, either that or, flip those 2 blocks and then just, make them all alley load. That's about the only possible way I see, that you could pull that off without impacting things or making a 5-way intersection or some really, atrocious thing like that. So, I mean, one of the things I have overall in some of the conflict that I see that's coming out of having the comprehensive plan, the 10-mile plan, and then code is we have some precedent out there that we're seeing. And what I don't want to see is more things go on where we have more applicants that say, well, they didn't do it. These guys didn't do it, so I shouldn't have to do it. So to me, if your argument for non-compliance is that somebody else was non-compliant, that still makes you non-compliant. So I just want to make sure that we're not going down that road any further than we have to. And that's, we kind of have the competing plans going on here versus code. So I understand we're not going to meet all of that, but I just want to make sure that we meet enough of it that we are sticking with the spirit of those plans so we don't get too far off track. Sorry, that was a really long explanation of how I feel about that. But the rest of the project, the one major concern that I have about this is how this is going to link up to the property to the south. That I am concerned about. I can see, that one right there specifically. I can see a lot of people utilizing that as they come through. So, and again, we're going into a neighborhood with smaller streets, smaller entrances, exits. You're coming onto, a bend in the road right there as well. So I am concerned about that. I mean, to be honest, I would almost rather see that as an emergency access with bollards. I guess if I lived in that subdivision, I would be very concerned about the level of traffic that would be coming into it. That's just me. I know there's a lot of connectivity that's provided in this. And again, this is a hard piece of property to develop. That is not lost on me for sure. But that one for sure, I am concerned about that. I mean, I don't know if I would condition it that way, but it's definitely something that maybe it is worth discussing is this, if this goes forward in this current iteration. Anybody else want to chime in?
Mr. Chair, just to make sure I'm on the
Good.
right page.
Yep, go ahead, Commissioner Smith.
Are you talking about the subdivision, the R8 on the opposite side of Franklin? Or are you talking about the southeast along that collector?
Just to the south where if you look at what's on the screen right now, essentially it's where Zimmerman is the subdivision exits out onto Zimmerman, and then in the upper right hand, kind of in the middle of the triangle there, that's going to that's going to be a, you know, a major access point to this. So, and people understand that they're not going to have to traverse through a larger subdivision to get to this. I wouldn't want to go around to Black Cat. I kind of avoid that road altogether anyway. So, you know, I mean, this is a really quick alternative to them. And where you have a lot of multifamily in there, that to me is just a concern, that you're going to have a lot of people traversing through that subdivision in order to get to this subdivision. So, which is, you know, part of how it all connects, but that just seems like that would be a lot of traffic load going through there.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. I guess, you know, to turn it around, it would be, if you had something, if you had the road connecting through, you know, essentially the smaller part of this application that was going into the multifamily, and it wasn't on the arterial there, that would be a concern. You know, that's a large traffic load for that. So, and that's not happening here, but just as an example, to me, that's just concerning.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
One quick thing here, to the applicant. I would see if you guys could get a little creative with that long strip of road on what to do there. Maybe like some little benches, maybe like some little doggy bag pickups, maybe some little fun, because I can see that turning into someplace. People are going to walk, people are going to walk their dogs, people are going to run, just something like that. Not a condition. I'm just saying, just kind of have fun with that, to have a long stretch of lawn to be able to deal with on a driveway like that too, on a drive aisle like that. You could have some fun with it, and make it creative and make our town beautiful instead of just a long drive on asphalt to get to the next point. It's something that you can have a little fun with there with the community and have them enjoy that too. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Go right ahead.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval of the city council file number H-2022-0088 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of March 2nd, 2023 with no modifications.
Do you have a discussion on the motion or a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Right ahead.
just discussion, because I was going to ask this question before maybe Commissioner Wheeler made his motion, and that
Oh,
is,
sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. It actually works out well, I think. When Bill gave his report, he encouraged us to put into our motion anything that we thought might be beneficial to provide direction. And I'm just wondering whether we adequately did that. And I don't know, from staff's perspective, were there things that you were hoping we would touch on maybe that we didn't, or?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I think my point to that is, I think we've had a pretty robust discussion about, you know, balancing density, open space, public benefit versus what the code says, what the comp plan does. So I think we've captured that, but what I was hoping for is if you guys truly do support the applicant's position on no, because there is a lot of analysis about the 30% front porches and a lot in the staff report on the design of the units. So I just want to make it clear that whatever recommendation goes forward to city council, your recommendation for approval, it sounds like that you just include that you supported the applicant's position that you know, it wasn't necessary for the 30%. Or you were good with the the front loaded garages since the TNR zone allowed for that, or something to that effect. So at least we can capture that in a DA. So again, we don't get a year from now, we understand that, yeah, we talked about it and we knew what we said, but we had a discussion and we determined that it wasn't something that we required. Because that's what we did on some of those other projects. So I just want to make sure we have a clear and clean record moving forward.
So, Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Was there a second? Does there need to be a second?
There has not been a second. We're still discussing, but with what Bill just added, would you like to change the original motion?
And that, to
Yes.
amend that a motion. Yeah, if I can go ahead and amend that a motion to state that we are okay with without the alley loaded driveways and the requirement for 30% of the porches on the residential.
I can work with that and wordsmith that a little bit for you, but
Okay.
yeah, you're good with garage dominated street access, 44 of the lots having street access and no porches, the 30% porches
The 30%
based on the
porches, yes.
design as shown. And then what about the townhomes? Are you good with that too on the alley load?
On the alley load on that, yes.
Thank you.
And I would second that.
It has been moved and seconded. Well, back to approve file number H 2022-0088 with the aforementioned modifications. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Excuse me, that's what it's for, that discussion in between. That's totally legit, totally good. It's actually better.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll be throwing that in from now on. I've learned from the mayor. With that, I would like to open file number H 2022-0085 Rackham East annexation and rezone. And we will begin staff report.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The applicant submitted an application for Rackham East annexation and rezone, and they submitted the application's annexation and rezone. The annexation is actually a sliver of property that consists of 0.143 acres of land that's currently zoned RUT and part of the overall Eagle View Landing project with a CG zoning designation, and that is located at 1032 South Silverstone Lane or Way. The rezone site consists of 3.938 acres from CG to the R40 zoning district for the multifamily portion on the south next to the R40 that's already zoned. That was previously platted on lots 18 through 19, block 1 of Rackham East subdivision located at 1074 South Silverstone Way. There is an approved development agreement on the property that was approved in 2022. And the comprehensive plan flume designation is mixed use regional. And the out parcel along the northern boundary of the site was owned by a third party and not part of the development agreement originally. And during that public hearing process for this development, the applicant placed the parcel under contract. And the property has now been acquired, included in the overall Eagle Landing project. City staff requested that the applicant rezone the R40, the southern portion to R40 and for the multi-portion of the development to more accurately reflect the uses in the development on the site when looking at the zoning map. Ultimately, the project was approved with a CG zoning designation for the multifamily portion of the development. And both office buildings and multifamily development are currently under construction and were approved with the certificate of zoning compliances design review for both properties. A condition of approval of the Rackham East subdivision and Eagle View Landing project required the applicant to annex the out parcel along the north, along 84, and rezone the western CG portion of the multifamily development to R40 within 1 year of the recordation of the development agreement. The application request is to initially ensure the cleanup of the zoning of these areas. And there wasn't any written testimony, and staff approves the requested annexation and rezone with the conditions in the staff report. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. The applicant would like to come forward, please. Good evening.
Good evening, commissioners. For the record, my name is John Wardle, 2929 West Navigator Drive, Suite 400, Meridian, Idaho 83642. On behalf of the ownership, which Brighton is part of that, we submitted this application to do this cleanup. These were previously approved. We agree with the staff report. I've got a lot of history with the project, so if the commission has questions specifically, I can answer those, but we have nothing to add or to change to the report that's in front of you this evening. So with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Commission, do we have questions for the applicant or staff on this? I was around when this came through the first time, so the only question I have is, did the person retire on what you had to pay him for that small strip of land? Because that was of great speculation when this came through. And you do not need to answer that. That was
Just for the record, it was 14 feet wide.
Mhm.
I don't know if they were able to retire, but maybe do a couple rounds of golf at Top Golf. So.
Good. Very good. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify?
Mr. Chair, we do not.
Do we have anybody in the audience that wants to come forward and testify on this? No? No further questions from the commission?
I've just, Mr. Chair, I just got one here. This is
Yes.
both are going to be for R40? Or CG's in the top is in the northwest or northeast section?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, so the CG portion is in the top, at the top next to 84. And
Okay,
well, it's actually RUT and it's the sliver of RUT and it's going to be zoned to CG. And then the southern portion is actually zoned to CG and we're rezoning it to R40 to match the apartments on the east side of it.
wanted to get it clear in my head. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, there is someone with
Right.
their hand raised.
Oh, excellent. Okay. Thank you for catching that.
Michael Blowers, go ahead and speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead. Need your name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Michael Blowers, 1325 Rolling Hill Drive, Meridian, Idaho. And purpose of me joining this call, it's kind of weird. I've been a part of this process. I remember the first meeting, not necessarily about this, probably 2015, just about the plans for this area. And I'm on here initially to say, like, I know February 2nd, I'm not sure what happened. I think it was a continuance or something. You know, there was questions about raising the building 20 feet or whatever. And I'm just here to say at this stage of the game, in support of it, don't really care at this point. But the reason why I'm coming here to comment on it is I believe Mr. Wheeler, I went back and watched the video because I wasn't able to attend, and it was refreshing to see some sort of empathy for the R40 or the residential portions situation. But a comment that I just couldn't let go that was said at the end of that was, but at the same time, no one's here to fight it. And I just wanted to, because I'm not sure, and I apologize for this, I don't know who is new. I'm bad with names and I'm bad with faces, so I know there's new people here, but I just wanted to clarify that at this stage of the game, the reason why many of us didn't attend or none of us attended is we have attended these planning and zoning commissions for things that we saw as obvious no's, and time again were dismissed. And so of all the things that have happened so far on this project, this ranked 100th on the list of things we cared about. I mean, we still don't even have a place to turn around a vehicle on our street because of this project. We still have 40-foot semis that have to back out into Overland Road at 5:30 during rush hour traffic because they can't turn around. And so if we can't even get something like that done, why would we expect our voices to be heard on something like this? And the other comment was that you liked infill projects, which maybe I'm wrong with the terminology. This wasn't necessarily an infill project. There was about 15 homes, as you can see on that imagery right there, that were demolished for this to happen. So just to give some history, just in case, I know it's been going on for a long time. We do very much care. We just know that it doesn't matter. And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blowers. Is there anybody else that would like to testify? Anybody else indicating online? No more questions for the applicant or staff? Okay, with that, I will take a, well, actually, Mr. Wardle, is there anything you would like to add? Okay, with that, I will take a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0085.
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0085. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, public hearing is closed. Yeah, and I'm appreciative that basically you're coming in here and tying up the loose ends on this. So this has been, you know, a hotly contested project, you know, overall. There were, I think that the applicant has worked with the people in the area in order to do some things that were kind of common sense, and they were, you know, at the direction of the commission and of city council. And you know, I mean, it's a difficult area for sure, just because of, I mean, you have a really, you know, you have one of these little enclaves of you know, county properties that are in there, of people that are used to a slower, quieter lifestyle, and you know, now they're surrounded by multifamily and Top Golf. So you know, it's been a tough application all the way, but I think what's going in there is appropriate for the zoning. It's you know, it has it has hit some roadblocks along the way that were cleared out. So, I mean, it is tough to, I do feel for some of the people that live there that are going to have this in their backyard for a little while, but it is what it is. Any comments? I'll take comments, criticism, motions.
Chair.
Commissioner Smith, go ahead.
After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval to the city council of file number H 2022-0085 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of March 2nd, 2023, with the following, or with no modifications.
Have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve file number H 2022-0085, Rackham East annexation and rezone with no modifications. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. And with that, we will open the last file, which is H 2022-0093 for the Paris in-home daycare, and we will start with staff report.
The applicant has submitted a conditional use permit for an in-home daycare. The site consists of 0.36 acres of land, and it's zoned R4, and it's located at 2239 West Fairwood Drive. There is no history on the property. The comprehensive plan flume designation is medium density residential, and the request is a conditional use permit to operate an in-home group daycare for up to 12 children. The applicant proposes to operate between the hours of 6:00 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. on weekdays. Parking exists on the site in accord with the standards listed in the UDC. And a total of two garage spaces are provided, along with 30 by 20 feet parking pad that exists that exceeds the UDC standards. There isn't any written testimony, and staff recommends approval of the proposed conditional use permit with the conditions in the staff report. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. The applicant like to come forward? Good evening. I just need your name and address for the record, please, and the floor is yours.
It's Paris Brower and I'm at 2239 West Fairwood Drive, Meridian. First time at a city meeting, so excuse my nervousness. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'm looking to start watching children within my own home. The conditional use permit instead of the family permit allows me up to 12 children, which Idaho does a point system based on the age. So this is going to give me more flexibility with the amount of children and the age groups I can watch. I have more than enough space. I have a 6-foot fence. I abide by all Idaho Stars programs guidelines. I've been working with children since I was myself a child. And with the influx of movement in the area and the desperate need for childcare, this is going to give me an opportunity to work with other families who are in need of trying to have one-on-one time with their kids and ensure that they can grow in a more home-based environment. It's pretty self-explanatory. I don't really know what else to add for you guys. So.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions for the applicant or staff?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lurcher, go ahead.
are you currently have any children at your home?
I do. I have 2 of my own. One is school age and one is only at the age of 2. Though I am not trying to get registered as a preschool, I do all STEM-based and preschool activities with all the children. And it's so far has worked out with my own who's excelling. Granted, he's only in kindergarten, but he is excelling. So
Are you watching any other kids or just your own?
no, just my own for now. And I do help out on occasion with, I have a family member with 10 children who I've assisted with. I have multiple nieces and nephews, and this is kind of going to give me that opportunity to reach out to not only my personal family, but my friends as well, who are struggling to find daycare for their children because they're within my area as it is. So,
Thank you.
Commissioners, anyone else? Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify?
There is not, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Sir, do you want to testify on this? You're the only person in chamber, so I just go direct. Okay, there's nobody else online. So unless you have anything to add or we have any further questions, I will take a motion to close the public hearing. Thank you very much, ma'am.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0093 for Paris in-home daycare. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, public hearing has been closed.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorch, go ahead.
there is a significant lack of daycare in our community, so considering that none of the neighbors seem to have any challenges with Paris's in-home daycare, I think that this would be a good addition to our community.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a few things about this that I really like. Generally speaking, with an in-home daycare, I mean, one of the first things that comes up is parking. With this, because of the way that this property is oriented with the property kind of to the south of it here, there's ample parking. So that's, one thing. The backyard is great. You already covered the fact that you have the 6-foot fence. I mean, that's great about this as far as an in-home daycare. The other is the close proximity to the Barbara Morgan STEM school, and there's also middle school, high school just up the road from this as well. So pretty good place to have this, really. It kind of checks all the boxes for me. So as far as an application for the daycare, it is, I think it's a good one. One thing that I will point out is this conditional use permit. So we are approving or disapproving tonight. So just make sure to formulate a motion that way if you choose to make one.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Wheeler, go right ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion here.
Okay.
After considering all staff applicant public testimony, which there was little of, I move to approve file number H 2022-0093 0093 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of March 2nd, 2023 with no modifications.
Discussion or
Yes,
second?
Second.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded to approve file number H 2022-0093 for the Paris in-home daycare. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. Thank you very much.
Good luck, Paris.
Yes. And with that, I will take one more motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved that we adjourned. All in favor, please, moved and seconded that we adjourn. Please, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.